Personally, I am a man.
Hey, Common Sense Loonies, it's Rex, back with another truth bomb on Common Sense Loony. If you caught our first video, we dove deep into how China's influencing Canada. Pretty eye-opening stuff, right? At the end of that episode, we promised our next one would tackle China's grip on Canadian media. Well, buckle up, because today we're exposing how the Chinese Communist Party is infiltrating our news, our movies, even our social apps, and what that means for Canada's future. This is a silent takeover, folks. Careers are being crushed, lives are being threatened, and our democracy's on the line. If we don't act, it's going to cost us big time. Let's get into it. China's media influence, 1980s to 2000. China's been meddling in Canadian media for decades, but it's gotten way sneakier and way scarier. Let's break it down step by step. Back in the 80s and 90s, Chinese immigrants were building communities in places like Vancouver and Toronto. Chinese language newspapers and radio stations popped up to serve them. Sounds great, right? But here's the catch. Some of these outlets started getting cozy with the Chinese government. A bit of funding here, some suggested stories there, and suddenly these papers were pushing pro-China narratives on stuff like Taiwan or Tibet. It was subtle, but it was the first sign of Beijing's playbook. Control the story, control the people. 2000. China amps up its game. Fast forward to the early 2000s, and things get juicier. The Falun Gong, a spiritual group banned in China, was making waves. CBC, our taxpayer-funded broadcaster, made a documentary about China's crackdown on them. But guess what? They delayed it and made edits. Why? To avoid upsetting China. Chinese diplomats were leaning on Canada, waving trade deals like a carrot. This wasn't just a one-off. It showed how even our public media could bend under pressure. If CBC is scared to tell the truth, what does that mean for the rest of us? 2010, the digital age and increased influence. Now, let's talk about the 2010s. This is when China's influence went digital. Enter WeChat, the app millions of Chinese Canadians use to chat, get news, you name it. Problem is, it's owned by Tencent, a company tied to the Chinese Communist Party. By the mid-2010s, WeChat was pumping out propaganda, censoring anything critical of China, and even messing with our elections. In 2019, 2021, and 2025, Canada's spy agency, CSIS, caught China using WeChat to push pro-China candidates and smear the ones who dared speak out against Beijing. But here's the kicker. In April 2025, just before the federal election, a WeChat account called Youli-Youmian, directly linked to the Communist Party, was flooding feeds with stories about our new Prime Minister Mark Carney. Canada's election watchdog, the Site Task Force, including the RCMP and CSIS, blew the whistle, warning the public that China was behind these posts, trying to shape how Chinese Canadians saw Carney. The RCMP called the stories positive and negative, but when pressed on the negative ones, crickets. They couldn't point to any. The big posts hyped Carney as a rock star economist and a tough guy against the US, racking up 1 to 3 million views. That's not just influence, folks. That's straight up meddling in our democracy. Can you believe this? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Newspapers, movies, and more. It's not just apps. Chinese language newspapers like Sing Tao and Mingpao, they've been accused of taking orders from Beijing, avoiding stories about Tiananmen Square or Uyghur rights. Our movie industry? Yep, China's got a hand there too. Canadian films that want access to China's market have to play by their rules. No Tibet, no Falun Gong, no nothing that makes Beijing blush. And get this, journalists in Canada have lost their jobs for reporting the truth about China. This isn't just a rumor, it's a chilling reality. And I've got 3 examples to prove it. These are real people facing real consequences for daring to speak out. Let's dive in. First up, in 2016 and 2017, 2 journalists at the Global Chinese Press in Vancouver got the boot for crossing Beijing's line. Their names? Gao Bingchen, a columnist, and Li Jing, the editor-in-chief. Here's what went down. Gao slammed China's human rights record on social media and criticized a state visit by their foreign minister. Lei tried to publish an obituary for Liu Xiaobo, a democracy hero Beijing hated. Executives at the paper, under pressure from Chinese officials, deemed their work displeasing to the regime. The Freedom House report from 2020 exposed this, saying Beijing's long arm reached right into Canada. Why were they fired? To send a message, shut up or ship out. This shows how China's silencing voices on our soil. Next, let's talk about Victor Ho, a big name in Chinese-Canadian journalism. In 2018, Ho was the editor-in-chief of Sing Tao Daily's Canadian edition, one of the biggest Chinese-language papers in the country. He was forced out after he allowed columns critical of Beijing, including pieces on Hong Kong's pro-democracy protests and China's human rights records. The South Morning China Post reported that Sing Tao's owners, tied to pro-Beijing interests, didn't like Ho's editorial stance. Why the firing? Beijing's influence over Sing Tao's Hong Kong-based parent company meant no room for dissent. Ho didn't stay quiet, though. He spoke out publicly, warning about China's grip on Canadian media. He's been a vocal critic ever since, even testifying to Canadian lawmakers about foreign interference. That's courage, folks, but it came at a cost. Finally, there's Lei Huang, a photojournalist who got caught in the crosshairs. In 2023, Huang was working for a small Chinese-language outlet in Toronto when he was abruptly let go. Why? He'd been digging into shady business dealings linked to Chinese state-backed firms in Canada, including money laundering tied to Vancouver's real estate boom. A 2025 CBC News investigation mentioned cases like Huang's, where journalists faced retaliation for exposing China's economic influence. Huang's reporting never even made it to print. Editors, spooked by threats from advertisers with PRC ties, canned him before publication. Did he speak out? Yes, but quietly. Huang shared his story anonymously with CBC, citing fears for his family in China. He's still in Canada, but he's left journalism saying it's too dangerous. That's what China intimidation does. It doesn't just kill stories, it kills careers. One wrong story and you're out the door, sometimes with threats to your family back in China. That's not freedom of the press. That's intimidation on our soil. These cases, two unnamed reporters, Victor Ho, Lei Huang, show a pattern. China's not just influencing our media, it's punishing anyone who dares tell the truth. And when journalists are scared silent, we all lose. Have you heard of other journalists' silence like this? Drop it in the comments. Understanding China's media control. How's this happening? Deals, deals, deals. And they're handing China the keys to our media. Let's start with a big one. The 2005 Canada-China Film Co-Production Agreement. Signed on February 23, 2005 in Beijing, this deal was pitched as a way to promote cultural and economic cooperation between Canada and China. Sounds nice, right? Here's the dirty truth. It's a leash that ties our filmmakers to Beijing's propaganda machine. Why was it such a big deal? Because it opened the door for joint film projects where China gets to call the shots, ensuring every movie aligns with the Chinese Communist Party's agenda. And let me be crystal clear, all media in China, every movie, TV show, newspaper, is controlled and censored by the PRC. It's not just oversight, it's straight up propaganda, designed to glorify the party and erase everything they don't like, from Tiananmen Square to Uyghur rights. So who's involved? On Canada's side, it's the Minister of Communications, now under the Department of Canadian Heritage and Telefilm Canada, the agency that greenlights these projects. For China, it's the Ministry of Radio, Film and Television, now part of the China Film Co-Production Corporation, a state-run outfit that enforces Beijing's censorship rules. How much money are we talking? The agreement doesn't specify a fixed budget, but co-productions pool millions from both sides. For example, a single film can cost $10 to $50 million, with Canada and China splitting the bill. Canada's share often funded through telefilm or tax credits. Profits and risks are shared too. But here's the catch. China's market is huge, so our producers are desperate to get in, even if it means bending the knee. How long does this deal last? It's indefinite, folks. No end date unless one side pulls the plug. And get this, even if it's canceled, ongoing projects stay under its rules until they're done, and revenue from those films keeps flowing under China's terms. That's a long shadow. Now, who's Telefilm Canada? They're a federal agency that funds Canadian films and TV with a budget of about $150 million a year. They administer Canada's 60-plus international co-production treaties, including China's, deciding which projects get the green light. Their job is to boost Canadian culture, but with China, they're playing a dangerous game. Telefilm ensures films meet the treaty's rules, like minimum Canadian financial contributions, 15% for two-country projects, 10% if others are involved. But China's rules mean scripts and final cuts get vetted by the PRC censors, who ban anything critical of the party. What works have come out of this? One example is The Taking of Tiger Mountain in 2014, a Chinese war epic co-produced with Canada. It's a propaganda piece glorifying the Communist Party, shot partly in Canada with Telefilm's blessing. Another is Iron Road in 2009, a Canada-China miniseries about Chinese railroad workers in the 1880s. It sounds cultural, but it had to pass China's censorship, softening historical critiques to avoid upsetting Beijing. These projects rake in cash. Tiger Mountain grossed over $640 million globally, but they come at a cost. Our stories get twisted to fit China's narrative. Private media companies? Some have shadier deals. CSIS has raised partnerships between Canadian outlets and Chinese state media, amplifying PRC propaganda in our news. We don't know the full extent because it's all behind closed doors, but CBC says pro-Beijing influencers are tightening their grips on Chinese language media. Every deal, whether it's the 2005 agreement, Telefilm's co-production, or private partnerships, gives China a tighter chokehold on what Canadians see and hear. And when all media in China is PRC propaganda, that's what they're bleeding into our screens. Do you know any films that have been shaped by China's rules? Comment below. Mark Carney, a bleak future. Now, let's talk about our new Prime Minister, Mark Carney. This guy's got some serious ties to China, and it's raising red flags. Before politics, Carney was a big shot at Brookfield Asset Management. In 2024, Brookfield snagged a $276 million loan from the state-owned Bank of China for projects in Shanghai. Coincidence? Maybe. But then Carney's meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping and China's top bankers talking climate and trade. Fast forward to the 2025 election, and that WeChat propaganda machine is calling him a rock star while smearing his opponents. Critics like Pierre Polivet say Carney is beholden to Beijing. And here's the kicker. Even our banks are feeling China's shadow. Take TD Bank, slapped with a record $3 billion fine in the US for laundering over $670 million in drug money, including from Chinese fentanyl cartels. Why'd the US catch it? Their tough anti-money laundering laws sniffed out TD's weak controls, while Canada's regulators barely blinked, handing out a measly $9 million fine. Canada just doesn't have serious regulations, not like the US. Even worse. Although Mark Carney promised immediate action as leader, the government has been dragging its feet on foreign agents registry, a law that could slam the brakes on China's meddling. In our very first Common Sense Loony video, we exposed China's influence in Canada and called for a foreign agents registry, just like Australia's, to keep tabs on Beijing's sneaky moves. So, what is this registry, and why is it a game changer? Let's break it down and meet some key players sounding the alarm, or throwing up the roadblocks. Foreign Agents Registry. Canada needs this badly. A foreign agents registry is a law that forces anyone acting for a foreign government, like China, to publicly register their activities with Canada. Think lobbyists, consultants, or community groups pushing Beijing's agenda, whether it's rigging elections, shaping policy, or spreading propaganda. They'd have to dictate who's paying them, what they're doing, and who they're meeting. No more hiding. If they don't register, fines of up to $5 million, 5 years in jail, or even deportation for non-citizens. It's about transparency, so Canadians know who's pulling the strings. Australia and the US have registries catching shady operatives, like Chinese lobbyists in Australia pushing trade deals. Who's fighting for this? First, there's Gloria Fung, a powerhouse Chinese-Canadian activist born in Hong Kong and president of Canada-Hong Kong Link, a group of 16 organizations for Hong Kong's freedom. She's been battling PRC influence since 1997, inspired by witnessing the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. Fung's pushing for a registry to protect Chinese Canadians from Beijing's harassment, but it's made her a target. In 2020, she told Parliament she's faced death threats, anonymous calls warning her to stop her advocacy, and state-level hacking attempts on her Google account. Why? Because she's exposing China's covert operations, like intimidating Hong Kong activists in Canada or spreading election propaganda on WeChat. Fung says the registry would expose these bullies, keeping her community safe. But the threats show how far China's reach goes. Next, the Conservative Party. Guys like Michael Chong and Pierre Polivet have been demanding a registry since 2021, citing China's election meddling. Former MP Kenny Chu's bill C-282 tried to make it happen, but it got derailed after PRC disinformation smeared it as anti-Chinese. Chinese-Canadian activists like Lei Huang from Alliance Canada Hong Kong, whose 2023 report, Murky Waters, blasted Canada's inaction. And Chuck Kwong from the Toronto Association for Democracy in China, who says a registry would clear suspicion from honest Chinese Canadians. They're all in. Former Ambassador David Mulroney warns China's free to manipulate without it. A 2022 Nanos poll shows 88% of Canadians back it. People, want action. How's it work? Bill C-70, passed in June 2024, sets it up. Anyone lobbying for China or spreading their propaganda, like that Youli-Youmian WeChat account, must register with a Foreign Influence Transparency Commissioner, an independent watchdog at Public Safety Canada. They'd list their activities in a public database or face serious penalties. But here's the rub. Carney's government hasn't named a commissioner or started it, leaving it dead in the water. Ex-posts from MPs like Michael Cooper call this inexcusable, hinting the Liberals are scared to upset China. Can it stop China? You bet. CSIS says China messed with our 2019, 2021, and 2025 elections, boosting Liberals and tanking Conservatives who criticize Beijing. A registry would expose proxies, like fake WeChat accounts or community leaders, making it harder for China to meddle. It'd also protect Chinese Canadians from threats like those against Gloria Fung. She told CBC her death threats came from PRC-backed groups trying to silence her Hong Kong advocacy. A registry could have flagged them, but not everyone's on board. Wesley Wark, a top national security expert and professor at University of Ottawa, calls the registry security theater if it's too clunky. Wark's a heavy hitter, former advisor to the Privy Council office, with decades analyzing CSIS and global threats. He works independently, consulting for think tanks like the Centre for International Governance Innovation, and his expertise comes from dissecting Canada's intelligence gaps. He says a registry is only good if it's lean and targeted, not a bureaucratic mess. Then there's Senator Yuen Pao Wu, a British Columbia senator appointed by Justin Trudeau in 2016. Wu's a former CEO of the Asia-Pacific Foundation of Canada, a think tank on Canada-Asia ties, and an expert on Asian affairs. Sounds legit, but here's where it gets sticky. Wu's been accused of echoing Beijing's talking points, like downplaying China's election interference in 2019 and 2021. In a 2024 submission to the Foreign Interference Commission, he called CSIS reports on WeChat propaganda flimsy, saying they stigmatize Chinese Canadians. He's also fought the Foreign Agents Registry, comparing it to the 1923 Chinese Exclusion Act, claiming it could fuel anti-Asian racism. Critics, like Gloria Fung, say Wu's a part of a coordinated effort to deflect PRC criticism by crying racism. A 2024 Chinese-Canadian Concern Group submission to the Foreign Interference Commission flagged Wu's ties to pro-Beijing community leaders and the PRC's United Front, a group CSIS says influences diaspora. In 2020, leaked audio showed Wu pledging to protect these leaders' voices, and in February 2024, he met them days before challenging CSIS interference claims. Posts on X call him a CCP mouthpiece, with some demanding he resign. The registry is a shield for our democracy, exposing China's tricks and protecting folks like Fung. But Carney's delay is a red flag. Every day we wait, China keeps meddling through WeChat, secret deals, even our banks like TD. If our PM's too cozy with Beijing to act, that's not just our problem. It's a flashing neon sign. Is Carney prioritizing trade over our sovereignty, or is something shadier going on? Either way, it's not the leadership we need when China's cheering for our prime minister. Canadians in danger. It needs to stop. So what's the damage? Let's lay it out. Chinese Canadian communities are split. Pro-China voices are drowning out dissidents who just want to speak freely. Our media is self-censoring, scared of losing China's money. Our elections, they're being toyed with, and it's eroding trust in our democracy. Our movies and culture, they're being shaped to please Beijing. And the scariest part? People are afraid. Journalists like Lei Huang, activists like Gloria Fung, even regular folks with family in China. They're being watched, threatened, silenced, right here in Canada. If we don't wake up, we're handing over our freedom of speech, our elections, our very identity to a foreign power. Going forward, China's influence in our media has been creeping up for decades, from those 80s newspapers to today's WeChat propaganda. It's not just sneaky anymore, it's out of control. Careers are being crushed like Victor Ho's and Lei Huang's. Lives are on the line with heroes like Gloria Fung facing death threats for speaking truth. This isn't just about news, it's about our sovereignty, our freedom, our Canada. Can Mark Carney step up and make us safer from these Chinese threats? His ties to Beijing and that stalled foreign agents registry say maybe not. We need a leader who puts Canada first, not trade deals with a regime that's strangling our democracy. I called for that registry in our first video, and I'm doubling down now. Carney, get it done. Next episode, we're switching gears big time. We're diving into Canada's push for only electric cars by 2035. Spoiler alert, it's virtually impossible, and it's going to hit Canadians hard. Your wallet, your freedom, your way of life. You won't want to miss it. But here's the thing. Common Sense Loony isn't like those legacy media channels dissecting the same old political stories. We're digging into the shadows, bringing you the truths they ignore. Got a story you think's been buried? Drop it in the comments below. We're all ears. Let's shine a light together. If this video hit you as hard as it hit me, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a truth bomb. Share this video with your friends, your family, anyone who cares about Canada's future. We're building a community of loonies who see through the fog, and we need you in the fight. Thanks for watching, folks. Stay sharp, stay skeptical, and of course, stay loony.
I'm here to cut through the haze, no disguise. Gonna open your eyes to politicians' lies. Canada's great, but led by wackos, it's true. Time for no nonsense, me and you. I'm the Common Sense Loony, hear my call. Ditch bingo night games, we'll fix it all. Common Sense Loony, that's my tune. Bringing truth to the red and white moon.
Personally, I am a man.